This is Goku-san DBZ, and welcome back for a new top 10 list. So with that said, we are looking this time at, in my opinion, 10 of the most underrated PS2 games. From my personal perspective, with that said, enjoy the music in the background. It is from Zone of the Enders, from Konami. First up, we have three honorable mentions. First off, is a great action platformer called, well, Haven, Call of the King. A game that I consider personally underrated, and it was interesting as it was a platformer developed by Midway. Midway wasn't exactly a company known for developing platformers, better well known for arcade games and fine games like Mortal Kombat. But still, it's an interesting game I recommend checking out as you can get it very affordable. Next up, of honorable mentions, is in my opinion the most underrated of the Tekken series, Tekken 4. A great game, and I love the open environments, and it definitely has a true amount of potential, and it had a lot amount of fun, and I just loved overall how you could interact with the backgrounds, the way you could use heals and stuff to your advantage for attacks. In other words, get the high ground. But with that said, Tekken 4 deserves a lot more love than it gets. And the last of the honorable mentions, I'm surprised a lot of people actually don't talk about, is a game I feel like it's maybe just a little too much distaste or hate from some people in the Kino Fighters community, and that being, of course, Kino Fighters Double Impact, or rather, Maximum Impact. But with that said, it was the first full 3D game in the series, and one of the reasons why it caused some controversy when it originally was released. But as for me, I still very much like it, and I feel maybe it's a little too much hate, and it is definitely underrated in my opinion, at least of the KOS series in any case. Now, coming in first at number 10 is the only fighting game on here. And coming at number 10 is Street Fighter EX3, as this game truly was the pinnacle of the EX series. The way it could implement different combo meters and everything, the amount of potential, different things you could do in the game is frankly absurd. And a lot of people who bash on back in the day because they thought it was cool, but then when you actually get into the game and actually check out the depths of the actual mechanics of the game, it is maybe, I would say, up there with Third Strike, if not even surpasses Third Strike, on the complexities of the actual gameplay mechanics. As Third Strike mostly just relies on the parry system. Personally, I prefer the different mechanics and systems in place in EX3 more than Street Fighter 3. But to each their own. Coming in at number 9. I've already mentioned many times how I feel of specific Silent Hill games, I feel Silent Hill 4 The Room is very underrated. But if we're talking strictly PS3 games in general, I have to go instead with Silent Hill Origins. As Silent Hill Origins was only released on the PSP originally, but would end up getting a PS2 release as Konami felt that the game was not going to do enough sales numbers, though even with the PS2, Silent Hill 4 The Room sold probably between 2 and 3 times as many copies as Origins did, making Origins by far out of those key games probably one of, definitely in my opinion, a very overshadowed and forgotten Silent Hill game by many people. I get why some people don't like this specific origin story or prequel. Personally, I really like Silent Hill Origins. Is one of my favorite Silent Hill games of all time. And as they say, opinion, or rather, everything is subject to opinion. But for me, Origins, I like the actual main character in the game, and also I like definitely some of the environments are really good in the creepiness factor. Yeah, some of the creature designs may not be as great, but I still do like several of the creatures in this game specifically. Plus, when you travel into the other realm and stuff, that's one of the things I actually like about Origins personally. But with that said, next up, coming at number 8. Also, weirdly enough, by Konami, as I've already said, the music in this video comes from this game. For me, at number 8 is Zone of the Enders. Now, yes, it was lucky enough to get an HD treatment with Zone of the Enders 2, though as time has progressed, I feel that more people look back and think about the second game, as especially given it got a VR version released on the PS4, while Zone of the Enders 1 has basically been forgotten by many people, which is unfortunate. I mean, Kojima actually worked on this game, of course, which explains a lot of the great music and definitely certain elements. Yes, I'll be a first to admit, Zone of the Enders, the English dub dialogue is not great, not by any means, or performances are very bad, but I enjoy it in that campy, bad B-rated horror film type feel and stuff. It's just something that really hits me, and I love the sci-fi setting of Zone of the Enders also, and the different robot bosses you get to fight in the game. And also, like I mentioned, I love the music. But with that said, next up, I'm curious to see what people's opinions are. But for me, that is number 8. Number 7 is a game I felt was ahead of its time. Now, in other countries, in PAL and in Asian regions, this was called Fahrenheit. But here, known as, or as I just call it, Prophecy. But it's a investigation suspense game with a great amount of build up, of suspense and stuff, and sometime I may try to get eventually around to doing a full recorded playthrough of the game, as it did get an HD re-release thanks to limited run games. So thank you for that. But this game is seriously really cool and unique, and it's very different from many other horror aspect style games of this time period in the sixth console generation. In the storytelling perspective, this is where I think this game specifically excels. Its great amount of tension, the build up is great, the overall flow of the game. I think there are issues here and there, like with many good or whatever games. But for me, I felt at the time when it came to overall the building of the game, I do think it was definitely ahead of its time when it originally came out back in like the early 2000s. Next up, coming in at number 6, Chaos Legion. A game I have talked about many times. Basically, Chaos Legion is what you get if you merged Devil May Cry with Final Fantasy, or more specifically, Final Fantasy VII. Why do I say that? Because some of the character designs in this game. Obviously, the main character has some influences from obviously Dante, but also if you look at the way he acts, certain elements at times of the game, he kind of reminds me a bit of Squall. I still think Squall's cooler, but whatever. Um, and FF8 fans will get that reference. But with that said, I like the game for what it is. I think it has a great overall mechanics. I think the actual fighting in the game is actually pretty fun for the most part. The grind can be a chore at times, but I could say the same thing about Devil May Cry games as well. And no matter how much people want to bash this game and call it a bad ripoff or some, well, guess what? It's still 10 times better than DMC2. Though I have kind of a fondness for that game just a little bit. But for me, yeah, at 6 of underrated games, Devil May Cry, and the reason why I said also FF7 kind of reminds me, it has to do with the main villain. He definitely has a very much Sephiroth type of vibe, the way he acts and everything in his design. You could tell was definitely influenced. But with that said, Next, coming in at number 5 is a game that has been lucky enough to get a digital remaster release, but still is criminally underrated. More people need to give this horror game a shot. Siren. It's a very unique survival horror game of the time period when it came out, when most things were either like copying other games. You know, you had Resident Evil, you had Silent Hill, you had brief one offs like Blue Stinger, you had Nightmare Creatures, which was more hack and slash. You also had interesting games like Obscure or the Echo Knight series. And then you had Siren. Of course, you had Clock Tower. But Siren is a unique game as it has like multiple people playing, and the fact that if you die, you can still technically control character. And by the way, this predates um, Resident Evil Outbreak. Fun fact. So there were elements I feel in Outbreak that stole or copied from Siren. Just my opinion, though, on that. But this game is very unique for the style gameplay. It is very much more loyal to like classic Japanese horror, and I actually appreciate that. It helps give it its own unique flair and feel for many other survival horror games of the time period when this actually came out. I still definitely have a deep love and affection for Siren. And I think this game needs a little more love than it gets. It is definitely unique. Just know also it does have a pretty decent difficulty curve. So you just need to know that. But many horror games of the time period actually did have decent difficulties. I think that's why some people bash on it. Speaking of, next, coming in at number 4, is probably one of the least well known Square games of this time period on the PS2. This little game is called Samurai Legends. This is a game I really love. It's a great action game, which does art style and everything of the characters very much seems to be very much influenced by like Kingdom Hearts. If you don't believe me, look at the back here. Some of these character designs. Tell me that does not scream like Kingdom Hearts 2 or something. In all honesty. It does, 100%. You could tell that Kingdom Hearts was a heavy influence on this game, or vice versa. But for me, it is one of the most criminally underrated games from Square Enix, by far. That very few people have I ever seen even on YouTube talk about this game, which is interesting, given there's some people I watch, they call themselves big Square fans, and yet they don't even know of this game. It is a blast to play. It's really fun getting the fight when you're on a motorcycle in the game and stuff and hacking at opponents and stuff. It's just a lot of fun. And by the way, this is a reasonably affordable game, so if you're at all curious, check out some gameplay on YouTube and pick it up on eBay, as it is very affordable. Which is strange for many Square games of this time period. But with that said, that for me is number 4. Number 3, however, is definitely not a game that is super affordable. But I love it for what it is. It's a unique game. In the series total, there was like 3 normal games in the series of the Echo Knight series. Echo Knight 1, which I have digitally thanks to PSN on the PS3 store, which I'm glad I picked up when I did, as it is like $6.99 or $4.99, something like that. Physical, you're looking at well over probably $200. Echo Knight 2 was only released domestically in Japanese region. It never got a traditional Western release, unfortunately. So if you're curious about the game, you're gonna have to just import. But keep in mind, you will have to have a way around region lock. But with that said, then there was this game. Definitely, probably the, I would say, out of the 3 games, the most successful was the first. As, like the others, this is also in first-person viewpoint. And also know there is a decent difficulty curve. Why do I say that? Because the Echo Knight series was developed by From Software, which is known for their, of course, difficulty, going all the way back to games like Kingsfield or even Armored Core. and many other great games. And other games they were technically involved in with, like Colony Wars and many others. But with that said, Echo Knight Beyond is very interesting as it is a survival horror game in space. You're basically alone. And it's interesting how they implement things like similar to a sanity meter, though it's done more with your blood pressure and everything you have to keep to a level so you don't have like a heart attack and die. It's definitely interesting element from the fear and stuff of the ghosts and everything is definitely interesting, and I do recommend if you get a chance to play the original Echo Knight and you can get digitally, check it out. Echo Knight Beyond is awesome. Now, just be warned, this game I have not seen digitally available, unfortunately, and because of that, price-wise nowadays, it has become ridiculous. It is arguably probably one of the like top three, I would say, hardest-to-find horror games that I personally have. But for me, that comes in at 3. Coming at number 2 is one of my personal favorite RPGs of the 6th generation. It is currently underrated. Absolutely love the art style in this game. I still love to death the first game, but between the two, more people know of Dark Cloud 1. But a lot less people know about Dark Cloud 2, and art-wise, the second game goes for much more of a anime and cel shade art style aesthetic from the first game, which was more of a traditional 3D game of the time period. But with that said, I still love the first game for what it is, but in my opinion, this game is far superior overall, at least in gameplay department, overall story and things. The world itself, I enjoy just a little bit more, but I feel, frankly, Dark Cloud 1 or 2 both deserve a lot more love than they get. They are some of the greatest RPGs of the 2000s. Take that for what you will, just opinion. But for me, I love this game and I will continue recommending this game to many people. But with that said, coming in at number 1, I have the games loose, but when I found this specific double games for a reasonable price range, factory sealed, I took advantage and grabbed it. So even though I already have them loose, coming at number 1, in my opinion, underrated game from the PS2 era is the Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga. A great double-parter story-wise, and I love how they even implement the cases together like that. It's pretty cool. And with that said, there, had the wrong side. But anyways, with that said, yeah, if you've never played these and you like games from Atlas, I highly recommend checking out Digital Devil Saga. It is arguably probably some of the most overlooked of the Shin Megami Tensei games, definitely on Sony platforms. There's definitely a hardcore fan base for obviously Persona 4, very popular, Persona 3, and there's part of me that loves a certain other Persona game, which also had a cameo in from Dante from Devil May Cry. But when it comes down to it, the games of this era, I actually think I ended up really preferring these games specifically. And it's amazing more people don't talk about the Digital Devil Saga series, as they deserve a lot more love than they get, and the fact that I was able to find them brand new for under $30 factory sealed for an Atlas game, that says something that it's not very well known or big among collectors. So I recommend trying to get these games right now while they're affordable, because speaking from experience, Atlas games are infamous for skyrocketing in value over time. You don't believe me? Look up the game called Roll of Rose, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Leave a comment below. Tell me, in your personal opinion, what are some of, in your view, the most underrated games of the PS2 era. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Hopefully enjoyed the music in the background from Zone of the Enders. I'll see you again soon enough.